Good rising, brethren. This is Big Judah coming to you guys from California. Before I begin, give all praises to the Most High Yahweh. Acknowledgement to the earthly mother. Who is wisdom? Who is Holy Spirit? Acknowledgement to Yahweh Shai. I pray the Most High blesses this lesson this evening. Gives more knowledge and understanding of the events of the past in order to understand the events that are currently happening on the earth. So we get a much better understanding of the things that are soon to come on the earth. Brethren, we're going to be getting into a couple of very rare books that we were never supposed to have gotten our hands on. And we're going to show how they are actually connected. We're going to be getting into first America. Okay? The New World right here. An accurate description of the New World. And containing what the original of the inhabitants, okay, of the remarkable voyages thither, the conquest of the vast empires of Mexico and Peru, and other large provinces and territories. Now, knowing the fact, well, we most know the fact that this book with the best information and most accurate maps and things like that, the book is close to $60,000. And the thing is that I've seen people who have like PDFs of the book and have seen pictures from the book and everything else. But I felt that the Most High led me to, get this book because there's other things in it that go beyond just what the natives look like. And there's a lot of things that we might not have understood before, but with the new understanding we've gotten from the Black Celts book, we can be able to pull out some more information and some more understanding. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing this evening. This book actually supports what's in the Black Celts book. Now that we understand that the Indo-Europeans did not show up into these lands until way later, and there's all this history about the people who were there before the Indo-Europeans and how they were so-called black people. Now, even with that, they still go off some because they try to make it seem, you know how they always try to do, all blacks are Hamites, and we know otherwise. So even when they admit some things, they're still hiding the fact, that yes, many people at that time, most people were people of color. So we know that, the Europeans are trying to still hide the fact of who was running these lands. But we had mixed people all over the place. See, they've made it seem as if all the biblical events happened in some little itty bitty tiny part of the world. The so-called Middle East and Egypt and a little bit of Rome, all the areas right there by the Mediterranean. They've skipped the vast majority of the world and act like nothing in biblical times was happening anywhere else but in this little itty bitty circle that they said there's, the so-called Holy Lands. Why exactly are we stuck just in one little area? We're the Most High's chosen people. After the flood, he gave many people their inheritances. That's something they never want to talk about, that the Most High has already divvied up the world. But without the understanding from the Black Celts book, you would read things in here and it would just go right over your head. But now understanding that from the Black Celts book that there were actually black sea pirates, as they like to say, African sea pirates. They're talking about and the fact that we were actually not stuck in just being on land in Africa, but these people were actually all over the place, performing trade. They were the merchants, the Phoenicians, which were definitely Hebrews, were actually the merchants of the world. And once we were taken down, the Gentiles got to be the merchants of the world. That's why that Revelation 18 is so important, where the merchants of the world are mourning the loss of America, because they know that's where they were getting all of these great resources to be able to trade worldwide in order that made them rich. But let's check out this one part here in this book that you're going to see that they're going to admit about. Well, you know what? Let me not spoil the surprise. Let's just read it. Some of my great historians, might want to put their 2 cents in definitely in the comment sections, because some of the stuff I'm not all that sure about as far as the historical things, but maybe them actually getting their eyes on this with their information will be able to bring out some more understanding to the nation. Okay, so I'm just going to read it. There's certain things I might see, but there might be some other things that you guys see. And if you guys see it, please share it in the comment section in order to give the nation more clarity. I got to get, well, actually, I think it's okay on this one. I have the book here with me. It's just a huge book. It's kind of hard to work in a small area I'm in. Terceira, lying halfway between Spain and America, was frequented by navigators before the birth of our Savior. Okay, so check that out right there. So even before the birth of Christ, people were already going to some island, Terceira, lying halfway between Spain and America, was frequented by navigators before the birth of our Savior. So they were already kind of going out there to some certain island called Terceira. Okay, so they were already kind of out there navigating. But then again, who are we talking about right here? Are we talking about, we know there was great navigators of our people, and those were the ones that actually were helping Columbus make it to the New World. And they were these black Jews who probably already been to the New World. So they're already telling you right here that there are already people going out super far into the oceans to certain islands that were already close to the Americas. So, and it seems as easy to sail from them to America as from the mainland of Spain thither. Add this, I'm just going to get the book because the copies are kind of hard to make. I'm kind of losing some corners. So let me just get the book. Let's read it directly from there. Okay. So let's see here. And it seems as easy to sail from thence to America. So it's easier to go from that island there to America, as from the mainland of Spain thither. It's easier to go from that little island to the New World than going from Spain all the way to the New World. Okay. Add this, the necessity forced the Spaniards to look about them from other countries. For since they lost their victorious champion, Balcius Gepetus, they were everywhere, beaten, being tired out by the Phoenician forces, and that oppression over, suffered as much under the Roman yoke. Wherefore it seems not strange if a considerable number removed from thence, that they might live somewhere else in quiet. So we're talking about some of these people actually trying to go and leave maybe to another place to live in quiet, okay? Because they were getting beaten by the Phoenicians and other people, okay? For which purpose they wanted to no conveniences to rig the fet and set forth stout and sufficient vessels able to live in those seas, having had long experience from the Phoenician voyagers, whose fleets sailed daily to and again in several expeditions from Cadiz and Gibraltar towards these western countries. Nay, Hanno himself, their first navigator that way, who gives an account of the Gorgons or the Isles of Cape Verde, a good part of the way to America. So it looks as if, we already know that the Phoenicians were already coming to the Americas. And that's what they're talking about right here as well. So we're talking about these Hebrews and everybody else, and these Phoenicians actually already sailing to the Americas. And that's what we're talking about right there. So let's continue. This part right here. This is just the next paragraph down, okay? And this is talking about the, if you can look here, English famous seamen, okay? And though Britain, Ireland, and the British Orcades lay further from America, yet something may be said particularly to prove that many ages since expeditions had been made from thence to the New World, and that the inhabitants of these isles in former ages were peculiarly famous for their skill in navigation. Now, right here is talking about how people in these former ages from these lands, from Britain and Ireland, were actually great navigators. Now, who's that talking about? It's not talking about the Indo-Europeans that showed up way later. It's talking about the so-called black people, African people, Hebrews, were actually great navigators. And there's actually already proof that the Phoenicians were already sailing to the lands of America, and as I talked about in the first paragraph, they were great seamen, expeditions, and they were actually already going to America. So if you're talking about people going to America before, or these great navigators going to all these different places before Christ, and then we also have these other folklores or legends of Christ actually going up into Britain. So now you're seeing how everything is not set in just one little itty bitty tiny area, and that's where everything happened. You got Phoenicians who have been all over the world, all over the place, trading, talking about coming to the Americas. You got information about Paul going over to Britain and Ireland. Now you got folklore or whatever else about Yahushua or Jesus going over to these other islands. So it seems like they've been really these the nations have been hell bent to make it seem as if we were never anywhere else, and that we've always been stuck in the so-called Middle East, and we didn't go anywhere else. You let them tell it that's how they've been showing things this entire time. But these other books that are hell of expensive and very difficult to get are talking about how our people were all over the place. Now, I've heard stories about like how they were finding like Roman coins over here in the Americas, and they were finding a lot of things that used to be that they thought were only in the third part. But if we're doing trade, would we not actually get, they're coming to buy some of our goods over here, our resources over here. So would they not use some of their coins to pay us? So then that would go to explain how there was actually a lot of Roman coins over here that they were finding, because we were already having trade with one another. Sometimes we were taking our goods over there, and they were paying us with their coins and bringing that money back over here. I said this actually helps to explain many things. See, many of them were not allowed to come over here, so they were going into. I'm going to get into this actually later on as well. There's more information. Link. Well, I want to get into it, but there's of just a lot of trade going on. So these people who've been trading, now they say they came over here and got a chance to actually get the resources that they've been trading for, they've been wanting. We were in control of all of that until we lost the blessing. once we lost the blessing, then these guys were able to come back over here. It seems to me, and this is just like my opinion, that maybe it's something about those islands, like of Britain and Ireland, because it seems like whoever controlled those seems to be able to control like the ships, navigation. Because when the Europeans got a hold of those lands and got control of those lands, all of a sudden, that little itty bitty island was able to control so much of the world. That little island, they were able to, make an empire so huge that, as I said, the sun never set on the English Empire because it was so big. How eventually, like the British, and I think they actually controlled some of the Asian countries as well. And you just look at their population, how would that even be possible? So I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking out loud, but it seems maybe something's connection with that land and being able to control other parts of the world as well. I'm not sure, but it just kind of seems like when we had some control of those lands, we had our control, and the Most High gave us control. We seem to be the commerce power. We used to be able to go all over the place and control areas. So not sure. See what you got. You guys can tell what you guys think about that. But this book right here is showing you how these were talking about, and let me read that part again. And though Britain, Ireland, and the British Arcades lay further from America, yet something may be said particularly to prove that many ages since expeditions had been made from thence to the New World. So right there, it's talking about the ages since expeditions had been made from thence to the New World. So they were making expeditions from Britain here and Ireland to the New World. And they were talking about how those were a lot of the Phoenicians as well. So you had great navigators already making these expeditions. But see, and they talk about how everything is just a new world because the Europeans discovered it in 1492. Well, there's already been expeditions going back and forth thousands of years before. So like we said in Revelation 6, how the Most High finally allowed them to come over to the Americas. And it was a brand new world to them because the Most High did not allow them to come over. So it seems like as if our people were able to go over there, trade, and bring some of that back over here and trade over here, or some of our people brought things over here to trade as well. Because I do remember how Solomon would send out his expeditions, and they'd be going for years, and they'd be making trade. Now it kind of makes sense as to how you find the cocaine and the mummies they talked about. That was actually only over here in the New World. Well, if there are people over here in the New World and they're sending out expeditions, or they're sending out groups, they're sending out trade vessels for years, and they're going, across the oceans, trading with the other nations. Then all of a sudden they start paying us, and with their gold coins or whatever else, or their coins, and we bring that back over here. And then later on, after 1492, and the Europeans are allowed to come over here, these people are now today finding these coins and everything else. They're like, how do these coins get over here? Well, there's your answer right there. Because we were already executing trades with each other thousands of years before. And that seems to be something that the other nations have been hell-bent on hiding. That's why this book is so expensive. And that's why I said before, just because, the Most High wanted us to get this book in order to be able to go even deeper. So these two paragraphs right here are just confirming what's in the other book, the Black Celts. And great, our people actually sailing in ships and going to different places. So they make it seem as if that never happened with our people. That the only people that were great sailors were them. And we know better than that. We know better than to believe what they're going to say, because they're hiding information. They want to make it seem as if we never went anywhere, we never did anything. But now if you see that we've been executing in trade, or going in and actually participating with trade with other parts of the world, I said that there shows you that they've been hiding information and they've been going out of their way to hide our greatness. And to brother Emulus. So a lot of people are trying to imitate, like they always try to do. They're always trying to imitate everything that we do. Right. We'll talk right here. Emulus, it was actually one of the words up there. Seeking to emulate or imitate someone or something. And that's really the other nations. They've been seeking to imitate everything that we've done. Hide the fact that we've done it and then try to take credit for them as if it was them from the beginning. That's what they do today. They want to be the chosen people. They want to be the priests. Says they want to be us so bad. And they've been good at doing that for a very long time, but it's just not working for them anymore. We're going to take a real quick look here at the Black Celts, an ancient African civilization in Ireland and Britain. Like I said, they're still pushing that Africa thing, but we don't need to waste our time on that. We know what they really mean. Let's see here. Top part right there. The Annals of Clonmacnoise, the Liber Gabala, or the Book of the Conquest, and the Annals of Ireland compiled by the Four Masters contain fascinating accounts of many ancient tribes. These books mention the arrival in Ireland of African sea pirates, otherwise known as Fomorians. It says the Irish annals are not simply a collection of old folk tales. They give the location of ancient burial mounds and tumuli and the sites of battles and other details which have been verified by archaeologists. But what it is, a lot of the other nations don't want you to know this, so they've been hiding it. The opening chapter of the Annals deals with the Irish version of the Great Flood. The remaining chapters, however, are based on historical events from the Neolithic, Bronze, and Iron Age. Indo-European speaking tribes first arrived in Ireland and Britain between 800 BC and 500 BC. The question of who inhabited these islands before them still remains unanswered. All modern books on Irish and British history completely ignore any connections with Africa. The very old copies of the Annals of Ireland openly mention the arrival of African sea pirates, while modern versions have deleted any reference to Africa. So they want to make it seem, and that's it. They're trying to make it seem as if Black people and Africans and Hebrews, any of that stuff happened only in one little area over there in the northern Africa and the so-called Middle East, and they never went anywhere else. But now you're realizing that these people were all over the place. Even before the Europeans came, they were already circumventing the earth. They were going all over the place. And they were trading. So they've been trying to limit them to just the Mediterranean Sea, and now we're realizing that it's way bigger than just that. And it answers a lot of these questions as to, where these coins came from, where these artifacts came from. They're only from, the so-called Middle East. How are they over here in the Americas? Well, there you go. Now you realize that these people were trading all over the place, and that the Europeans were left out. Most High didn't want them over here, so the Most High kept them from coming over here. They couldn't get to the suppliers. They weren't allowed to come over to the suppliers and get the stuff over here, because they know as soon as they came over here, they're going to try to steal everything anyways, because that's what's in their nature. And so right here, they changed up the history in order to make sure that you don't hear about any Black people being in Ireland or Britain or any of these places. That's why you watch their movies. The good guys are white and the bad guys are white too. Everybody's white. Everybody's in all the movies. They're making everybody white. But that's okay. I said Most High is bringing this information out and it's understanding out. There's another one right here. This one did get a little cut off as well, but I'll read it to you guys. This is about page 50. And this is about the history right now and how they're how to bring in some of the so-called black people in order to be able to take down what's going on right here. These some of these leaders. Let me see here. I'm gonna read it here from the top. He also mentions the involvement of Africans in the struggle between the British and the Anglo-Saxons. When Constantine, I think that's the third, ruled Britain, the Saxons, a pagan Germanic tribe from northern Germany, continued to raid the British coast opposite France. The Saxons were a minority in eastern Britain, which at that time was inhabited by both Celtic and pre-Celtic tribes. See that? You're making a difference between Celtic and pre-Celtic. Whites, Indo-European, and then the African ones. So they're so-called African ones. Okay? A revolt by the Saxons was crushed by Constantine. The next ruler of Britain was Ceredec. A Saxon revolt also took place during his reign, but unlike his predecessors, he was unable to maintain the independence of Britain. This Saxon revolt against the British was successful because the Saxons sent for Gormond, the African ruler of Ireland. There you go. Who they sent for? Gormond, the African ruler of Ireland. So the Ireland was run by so-called black people. I'm not saying there was Africans, okay? Because those lands have a whole lot of ley lines. So I'm sure those are definitely, and those are not, Ireland is not the land of Ham, because it's not desert. So therefore that would be our lands because it has seasons. But again, let's continue. Okay, it was successful because the Saxons sent for Gormond the African, ruler of Ireland. According to Geoffrey of Monmouth, Gormond the African sailed from Africa with a massive fleet and conquered Ireland. The presence of Africans in Britain is also indicated by the Irish annals, which mention the coming of the Blue Men from Morocco. The Saxons and the Africans were at first bitter enemies. But after signing a peace treaty, the Africans waged a devastating war against the British. 160,000 Africans accompanied Gormond into Britain. Ceredec, the ruler of Britain, was forced to seek refuge in the city of Cirencester. Gormond then destroyed this city, forcing Ceredec to flee to Wales. Geoffrey of Monmouth then tells of how the Africans allowed the Saxons to settle Loegria, central England. Many Britons fled to remote areas and the western part of the island. Some sought refuge among the people of Brittany. Historians have regarded this story as completely untrue. Of course they have. You remember now they're playing God, so they're always playing God, and if they don't accept it, then it's not true. Like the Most High gave him that kind of power. Okay. However, the Welsh Triads, a collection of ancient Welsh tales about early Celtic Britain, also mention non-Indo-Europeans entering Britain. The Triads associate these invaders with Arabia. Before giving an account of these Arabian Britons, the evidence we have so far is as follows. And I'm going to make another video about those here at the bottom. I kind of didn't get a good copy there, but I'll read it to you, okay? The Irish annals frequently mention Africans entering Ireland and Western Scotland. The Irish annals also mention black men in connection with the Danes. So you hear about the Danes. Well, the Irish annals also mention black men in connection with the Danes. So you got all these new games coming out, and they always have the Danes as being white people. Well, Here you go. Talks about how the Irish annals also mention black men in connection with the Danes. So the Danes, you know there were black people that were coming in and wreaking havoc and destroying these people. Geoffrey of Monmouth states that the giants from Africa, okay, when they inhabited Ireland, brought the large stones used to construct Stonehenge. The standing stones on the Isle of Lewis are believed by the locals to have been erected by black men. Gormond of the African allowed the Saxons to settle in England. So now you got information from two very expensive or very difficult books to get that talk about black people, people before the so-called Indo-Europeans were already circumnavigating, traveling to America, they were great navigators who were going all over the place. I'm gonna give you guys even more information about what was going on in the Pacific later. And then that's why the Most High moving to get that book, because it's more important than just looking at the pictures of the so-called black Indians, but there's also other information that's going to substantiate what the Most High's already brought out here in the future. Our people were the great navigators. Our people were also the great merchants. Our people were given this land and kept the others out of it, just like he said he would. The other nations were going after and wanting, our resources, and they were willing to pay handsomely for it. The Most High has it in our Bible how, Solomon was already engaged in trade. And he doesn't, and if they're gone for 3 years plus, they're covering some great distances. Most High is working to bring so much more information out, brethren. All praise is to the Most High, Yahweh. Acknowledgement to the earthly mother. Who is wisdom? Who is the Holy Spirit? Acknowledge Yahushai. Shalom.